Welcome, and thank you for joining us as we celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, as well as the centennial of Miami's iconic Freedom Tower. Today, we'll travel across centuries, from the birth of the United States in 1776 to the Cuban exodus of the late 20th century, to see how one bold declaration in Philadelphia became a beacon of hope that still shines today. Philadelphia, July 1776, a hot summer's day. In Independence Hall, delegates gathered to sign a document that would forever change the world, the Declaration of Independence. It boldly proclaimed that all men are created equal, and that governments derive their power from the consent of the governed. These were radical ideas in a world still ruled by kings and emperors. But this wasn't just lofty language. For the signers, it was dangerous. They knew that by putting their names on that parchment, they were committing treason against Britain. The penalty? Death. Yet they signed anyway, choosing liberty over safety. And in time, their gamble paid off. With victory at Yorktown in 1781, a new nation was born, one rooted in the promise of freedom. But this bold declaration wasn't just a statement for one time and place. Its ideals echoed far beyond 1776. Across oceans and throughout centuries, people facing oppression looked to America's founding words for inspiration. The United States became more than a country. It became a symbol, a beacon of liberty for those who dreamed of a better life. Fast forward nearly 2 centuries to Cuba, 1959. A revolution swept through the island. At first, many hoped Fidel Castro would bring freedom, but soon property was seized, the press silenced, and political opponents jailed, or worse. For countless Cubans, it felt like they were living under their very own King George III. Their choice was the same as the American colonists: risk everything for liberty. But instead of fighting a war, many Cubans chose exile, and their eyes turned north towards the United States. The Freedom Tower began in 1925 as the headquarters of one of Miami's first newspapers, the Miami Daily News. Its light, atop the 17-story building, served as a beacon for ships coming into Biscayne Bay. Then, beginning in the 1960s, waves of Cuban exiles crossed the Florida Straits seeking refuge. Miami became their landing place, and one building in particular became their beacon of hope, the Freedom Tower. Known as the Ellis Island of the South, the Freedom Tower welcomed nearly 400,000 Cuban refugees who were processed under the U.S. government's Cuban Refugee Assistance Program. Most of these families arrived from 1965 to 1973 on the so-called Freedom Flights, the largest refugee airlift in American history. More than 260,000 Cubans stepped off those planes and into new lives. Inside the cavernous halls of the Freedom Tower, the new arrivals were provided with medical assistance, job referrals, and staple foods until they could secure more permanent accommodations. For those who walked through the doors of the Freedom Tower, America's founding ideals weren't abstract words from centuries past. They were a living promise waiting to be fulfilled. And over time, the Freedom Tower, known affectionately as El Refugio, or the Refuge, became an iconic symbol of liberty for Miami's Cuban exile community. Now, think about the connections. In 1776, colonists defied a king to secure liberty. 200 years later, Cuban families fled dictatorship, seeking that same liberty. Both risked everything, both transformed the communities they joined, and both remind us that the words of the Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, speak to all people in all times. From Independence Hall in Philadelphia to the Freedom Tower in Miami, the thread is clear. Liberty is not just a historical event. It is a living promise. The American Revolution didn't end at Yorktown. It continues every time America opens its doors to those who seek freedom. And as we celebrate 250 years of the Declaration of Independence, we honor not just the founders, but every generation, like the Cuban exiles, who have tested, renewed, and carried forward the enduring promise of liberty. Thank you for joining us on this journey. May the flame of liberty, first lit in 1776, continue to shine for generations to come.